So this is our second lesson on groups and teams, and today we're going to focus on the productivity of groups, and in particular a concept that we talk about called social loafing. So how productive are teams? What's the effectiveness of a team? And really we're answering this question at the top about, is it just individual talent that makes the best team? And I think we know from last lesson about cohesion that that's not the case. So Steiner came up with his model of group productivity, and he did suggest that, and did find through his research, that the most important resource for teams was individual talent. In other words, we need good players to have an effective team, and that's the most important resource of the team. However, this does need to be transformed into a collective performance, so we need those good players to transform their efforts into a collective performance. So Steiner came up with this model, and you need to know Steiner's model and the parts of it. So first of all, the actual productivity equals potential productivity minus any losses due to faulty processes. So what we're saying here really is that how we actually perform, so how well a team actually will perform, is made up of their potential. So this really potential is really how good the players are. But if we just look here, so it can be the players' ability and skills, which is obvious, but their knowledge and experience, how fit they are, etc. So all of that goes into their potential. So how well are they capable of performing as a team with all of that individual resource being put into it? Now we know that often the potential of a team isn't fulfilled, and that this actual productivity isn't as good as the potential. And if that's the case, it's likely that there's been some of these losses over here due to the faulty processes. So we need to look at these faulty processes and look at what types of things can detract from a team's potential productivity. The first one is coordination losses. So this is a little bit linked to the cohesion stuff that we talked about in the cohesion lesson. So this would be that those players don't interact very well as a team. They're maybe not sure about what tactics are, or maybe don't have strategies and tactics. But they're things like their timing and movement patterns. They give the ball away a lot, just not because of bad passing or movement, but just because we're not interlinking those bad passes and movements together with the right timing, etc. So, if we think about these four sports, just have a think for a second about the types of sports that they are and which one would be most likely to suffer from coordination losses. So I'm hoping that you're thinking about that the most likely to suffer from coordination losses would be basketball and football, and the least likely to suffer from those losses would be the relay and the cricket bowler. This is due to the interactivity of the sport. So basketball and football are interactive sports. Cricket and the relay are more coactive sports where we're performing as individuals within a team. So this links on to what we call the Ringelmann effect, and this is a term that you need to know and that could be examined. And the Ringelmann effect, which is named after a French guy who did a study a long time ago, one of the very first studies in sports psychology, is about the fact that coordination losses are more likely to occur in larger groups. Right, so the larger the group, the more coordination losses happen. And I guess this is fairly much common sense. So if there are more players to interact, right, so basically we would say that in football there would be more coordination losses than basketball, for example, according to the Ringelmann effect. So here are the results of Ringelmann's study. So this was, and you can see how old it is, 1800s it was done. So it was done on a tug-of-war task. So they got people to perform individually and measured how much force they could pull on a tug-of-war. Then they put them into groups of different sizes. So you can see with a group of 2, they were still pulling quite a lot of their individual potential. But by the time we get up to a group of 8 here, we're only pulling half of the force that should be pulled. Now Ringelmann initially put this down to coordination losses at the time, that it was their interaction of when and how we were pulling together as a group. So maybe, a couple of people at the front, are they interacting with the people at the back, etc. So just some more evidence around this, and just shown some research from Jones, who looked at individual ability and team success. So high correlation, but highest in baseball and lowest in basketball. So have a think about why that might have been the case. So again, I'm hoping you're thinking that in baseball, really that's another example of a coactive sport where we bat as an individual. You've got your pitcher who pitches as an individual. So if you've got a high-class, top-quality pitcher who can bowl people out, and if you've got top-class batters who can score home runs, you're going to win games. So the individual ability, more important in baseball than in basketball. So in basketball, in other words, what we're saying is, this is why the Yankees are so good, because they buy all the best players in baseball. But if we look at basketball, then it's more likely there would be an upset. And this is why your top teams in basketball will lose more often than in baseball. But is it just this interactivity? Is that all there is to do with team performance? Is it just the way that we coordinate our movements with each other, or is there something else? Well, obviously there is something else, because the second type of loss is motivation losses. So people or performers might not give 100%, and they may course through a game. They might not just put it all in, or hide even within a game, that they, for example, hide from wanting the ball. This often happens when they might rely on their teammates to do their running for them. Alright, they want to take a breather. Alright, I'm going to rely on my teammate. It's alright, I don't need to get the ball, they'll do it for me. And another key term that you need to know that describes this is called social loafing. So within a social situation, we would loaf. This is an American word that means to not try very hard, to not put the effort in, to loaf. So social loafing. So going back to Ringelmann's study, you can see at the bottom here, same results, just to remind you of what that was about. But at the bottom here you can see that a similar study done more recently in the 70s found similar results. But they controlled in their experiment for coordination losses, so there shouldn't have been coordination losses involved. And therefore they were able to attribute the losses to a lack of motivation. So within that group of 8, it's alright kind of attitude, that because I'm in an 8, I can get away with not trying my hardest. So they attributed these losses to social loafing. So when might we loaf? So that this might be when we're winning easily. We can take it. We're able to take it easy. But if we're losing heavily as well, alright, that might be a time when we kind of give up. We may rely on the star player. Alright, so think of the basketball team who just keeps giving the ball to the star player, or that the teammates don't feel they should be putting the maximum effort in because the star player just hogs the ball all the time, for example. It might be that the player doesn't feel valued by the coach, etc. Alright, they don't feel their input, or that they're valued as a player in their qualities. It could be that we're just fatigued, and that we're loafing to have a breather. Or it could be, even on the other side of that, it could be that it might be your role within a team to not actually try the hardest, but to be tactically aware and sit in a certain position, like a defensive midfielder, for example. It might be that you have a lack of self-efficacy and therefore you are hiding, or if you can get away with it. Alright, so if you can hide, if you can within that big group, if you're going to get away with it, if there's going to be no consequences from the coach or the team, then you might continue to loaf. So, as usual then, we'll look at what can the coach do about it. So, how can the coach reduce or avoid social loafing in their team? Now then, we've got to be aware that we've also got a similar question in the cohesion topic. So, how can we increase cohesion? And although some of these answers are very similar, or even some are the same, you've got to apply it to the social loafing context. So, with cohesion, it was very much team answers. Social loafing, remember, is about individuals. So individuals loaf. It's not the team that loafs. Well, you hope it isn't. But it would be all of the members of the team if it was a team loafing. So every individual would be doing it. So individuals loaf. So you've got to give individual answers so that you would get reduce the amount of social loafing of those individual players. So give them roles, give them responsibility. All right, key. This is going to motivate the player, giving them some sort of responsibility or giving them a role within the team and knowing each other's roles. We can develop the social cohesion and peer support, because it might be that people need to get on at each other, to encourage each other, or even, shout at each other if they're not putting a shift in. We can improve their fitness, because the fatigue in the last 15 minutes of a game, for example, might be poor. And if we improve fitness, then we can make those runs and don't need a breather. Vary the practice, again, motivational reasons. It might be that the players are bored, alright, so maybe they just need it freshening up and motivating. Individual goals, so again this is just one that's slightly different. In cohesion you would answer around collective team goals. Here we're going to set some individual goals for people to, it might be, and it's in that last 10 minutes we're going to make 3 forward runs into the box in the last 10 minutes. That will be an individual goal for someone to avoid social loafing. Praise their individual contributions, and again here it would be key that the praise comes for effort, because we're saying how do we reduce social loafing, which is a lack of effort. So we would have to praise the effort of the players, praise those individuals who really try their absolute best and don't go hiding. And the key one is the valuation. So we can really, these days with the Prozone and the video analysis and all that kind of stuff, we can really evaluate individual performances through all of those things and break it down into 5-minute slots and all that kind of stuff, and see how many forward runs we make, see how many tackles we've made, see how many times we've closed oppositions down, etc. So, and there was a study that was done in swimming relays that showed that across a season, so it was a longitudinal study across a whole season, and this swimming team, the team time was faster in pools that showed the split times of the individual swimmers. The team time was slower in pools that only showed the team time and not the individual split times. In other words, the swimmers of that team knew that their split times wouldn't be publicly shown, wouldn't be evaluated, and therefore maybe they loafed in those pools without the split times on the scoreboard. So this shows us that if people are made accountable for their individual performances, then they will be more likely to not loaf. So it doesn't have to be as sophisticated as video or split times on scoreboards. You can just tell them, I'm watching you today, or I've got someone in the stand doing these stats on your performance today. And if we think we're being evaluated, or if we think there's going to be consequences for not trying, the performer will likely try harder. The other one we can do is develop their self-efficacy. So obviously if we're more confident, we'll keep going, we'll want the ball all the time, for example.